Hello, everyone. As promised, today we're going to be talking about enlightenment. This is for the course of Contemporary Society of the 19th Century for TecCCM. So please just follow along. I'm going to be talking about some concepts regarding Kant, regarding also some of different thinkers that configured the Enlightenment. For this, I have prepared a presentation for all of you. So stay with me for a moment. I'm going to be sharing with you my screen. And here we are. Now, let's start with the presentation. Okay, usually the Enlightenment has it has different dates, or it's marked between different dates. The usual date, the one that we're going to be using for this course, is this one, 1715 to 1789, the one that you're looking at. This is the dates that the French historians have given to the Enlightenment. We're going to see in a couple of minutes that the Enlightenment as an intellectual movement that we are going to be studying has different ways to be understood. Also, the Enlightenment does not stay only in France. It's a movement that moved later on to different parts of the world. We can even say that as part of the Enlightenment, we have the independence of the 13 colonies in the States, and as after that, we have the independence in Mexico. That is going to be linked to topics that we're going to study next week. Okay, so just for you to remember, these are the dates for the Enlightenment, for the French historical version of the Enlightenment. Okay, so first of all, what is enlightenment? What ideas pop into your mind when you talk about enlightenment? Usually, enlightenment is defined as this period in history in which the idea of knowledge was spread all over Europe, and the main idea for enlightenment was to generate social changes, political changes. What I'm going to present to all of you right now is the concept of enlightenment by Immanuel Kant. So let's all read together. What is enlightenment? Enlightenment is man's release from his self-incurred tutelage. Tutelage is man's inability to make use of his understanding without direction from another. Self-incurred is this tutelage when its cause lies not in lack of reason, but in lack of resolution and courage to use it without direction from another. Sapere aude, have courage to use your own reason. That is the motto of enlightenment. This is a quote by Immanuel Kant, and I find this to be the most important quote for defining enlightenment. What this quote is telling us is that to be enlightened, what we need to do is to dare to use our own reason. What we need to do is to dare to think by ourselves. In this way, enlightenment is a way of growing up, of maturing, of becoming part of becoming an adult. Kant would say that all humanity has been in this some sort of childhood in which we are just waiting for our mom and dad or our parents, or we're just waiting for the state or the religion back in those days to tell us what to do, to determine what is right and what is wrong. However, what Kant is stating over here is that we should nowadays, and that we should during the Enlightenment, start to think by ourselves. This actually means that what we need is to become aware of all the knowledge that we have in the world. That is the main idea for the Enlightenment. Kant later on, as you will see in a couple of semesters when you get to philosophy courses, Kant is going to say that we need to detach ourselves from all these theories that try to explain the world only using the concept of God. He's going to say that we need to understand nature, we need to understand time, we need to understand space, and we need to understand ourselves as subjects, as individuals that are trying to know the world. But we must know the world through reason. In this way, Kant is following up on what René Descartes said many years ago, that the first thing that we need to know the world is that we are thinking. Descartes, as you already know, and we're going to study that in a couple of minutes, in a couple of slides, Descartes was the father of rationalism, and rationalism is this current of thought that states that reason is the main way to acquire knowledge. Okay, so for us just to have this wide idea of what is enlightenment, this quote by Immanuel Kant actually works. Let's follow along. What I would like you to do now is to please stop this video and go to YouTube. When you go to YouTube, you please Google the French Revolution crash course, and you're gonna get to one video similar to this one that I'm presenting over here. I don't want to pass it through this media because I think that all of us can use those different resources with Google, with YouTube. Okay, so I'm just gonna wait here for a couple of minutes until you go to YouTube, watch that video, and come over here together all back now. Okay, so let's wait for you. Okay, so now that you've seen this video, the video led by this guy on Crash Course, what do you think about his ideas? He's presenting us the French Revolution as the change from one despotic government to another despotic government. He's telling us actually that the French Revolution was mainly about fighting a regime. In this regime, we are trying to change the way world is ordained. What he's implying in all these ideas is that the Enlightenment is going to lead to some political change, and at the end is going to enable for revolutions to happen all over the world. However, what happened during the Enlightenment is that not everyone was actually nourished and had a good development from this revolution. For instance, something that we can say is that it is mainly the bourgeoisie, the one that had this process of maturation that led to development of ideas. Bourgeoisie, as you know, is just one part of the state, one part of the society that has the most capacity of having money. Is the part of society that has more wealth. So what happened is that this bourgeoisie started a process of maturation that led into a change of regime or a change of ideas. Okay, and now we're just going to present to all of you this idea by Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson says that it cannot be expected that humankind is transferred from despotism to freedom in a bed of feathers. What this idea by Thomas Jefferson is explaining is that changes through history will always imply conflict. That is what happened in the French Revolution. That is also what happened in the independence of the 13 colonies for the states, and that is also what happened in independence from Mexico, from Spain. We're going to study those two late topics in the next couple of weeks. What I would like you to do now is to follow along with me to see this brief chart that I've created for all of you, so that we can understand what the Enlightenment is. Okay, so first, if we want to try to define what is Enlightenment, we can define it as an intellectual movement as an intellectual and scientific movement of the 17th century that is trying to enlighten or to illustrate society through the diffusion of arts, thought, and education. That would be another way to define it. As you can see, it is similar to the one presented by Kant, but this is just telling us the way to leave this tutelage. And Kant would agree with this definition, since the way to leave the tutelage is by self-education, by becoming more aware of culture, by thinking by yourselves. Then enlightenment is going to have two main causes. On one hand, the socio-economical causes that is going to lead to development of administration, commerce, and industry. These three will lead to the growth of cities, and these would also lead to a better organization of the state. This is going to make the cities to expand, and when the cities expand, there is also the possibility that poverty expands as well, because those living outside the cities do not have the same opportunities that the ones that live in the cities. And in the cities, there's also a lot of competence, and there's a lot of tax recollection. So it's not easy to have a good way of living within these growing cities. Okay, and the other thing that enabled the Enlightenment was the scientific and technological advance. As you remember, the last couple of weeks, we were discussing some part of the changes that were done on the way we perceive the world by Galileo Galilei. That was part of the scientific revolutions. Before, in the time of Galileo Galilei, that was during the 15th to 16th century, the scientific and technological advance were not that huge, and they were not possible because you had the church as an institution that oppressed the people in order to develop more ways of thinking and understanding the world. Okay, so now during the Enlightenment, the church is not oppressing that much society, so that we can now start to have different theories on how to understand the world. Then what is going to happen during the Enlightenment is these following ideas. So the Enlightenment characterizes for presenting a critical understanding of reality. This critical understanding of reality implies that the individuals back in those days during the Enlightenment use better their critical thinking. As you can see today, or as you can remember, critical thinking is one of the main competences that we are developing in Modelo Tech 21. This means that in some way, we are following along with the Enlightenment ideas. We are trying to be critical towards reality. Then during the Enlightenment as well, it was reason the main way to acquire knowledge. Also, they are going to try to reject divine revelation and tradition. I'm going to make a brief pause over here. Try to remember your history lessons from your secondary school. Remember that back in those days, they talked to you about the medieval times. During the medieval times, they thought that faith was the main way to try to achieve knowledge. Faith was the way through which God revealed the order of nature to mankind. And reason was the mere code cracking, so to speak, that allowed us to interpret this revelation by God. Just trying to present you with an example. Imagine that back in those days, during the medieval times, the faith was the coding that you use in a computer, the code that is always just using binary numbers, just one and zero. Try to remember the idea of the matrix, maybe, or try to think about these programming motions, or all these persons that are creating the apps in order for you to use it. And reason would be the software that is interpreting this code and presenting then an application that you can play on. Try to think about maybe your Xbox, your Xbox or your PlayStation. Beneath all the images that you see, there is always behind that a lot of programming. Okay, so reason is what allows you to see the images, and programming would be the faith in this analogy. Okay, so what the Enlightenment is going to do is to reject that faith is the way through which nature and God's will is revealed to us. What the enlightened people is going to say is that through reason, we need to know the world. They are also going to see history as a progress. They believe that we have different periods of time, and that nowadays, today, as we are today, we are better developed, or we're more developed than the man of the cave. They are going to have this idea. If you think that this is actually quite logical, as most of us you may say, it is because we're following with this idea of history as progress. Yes. Now, following along with the next idea, during the Enlightenment, they are also going to reinforce the concept of freedom, and they are going to use also this Lutheran reforms as a base in order for us to develop a better understanding of the world. All these ideas that I've just explained are going to contradict the ideas sustained by the old regime, by the ancient regime, that was the one that presented a monarch, and that the monarch was placed over there by God's designation. So they are presenting this idea of for you to have the possibility of moving through different social classes. Actually, capitalism is going to follow along from illustration. We wouldn't be able to change in social classes now as we do nowadays if the illustration had not happened. I would like you to see all these connections from the past and how are these ideas from the past now enabling for us to understand enlightenment, to understand society nowadays. Okay, now during the Enlightenment, there were some main representatives or main authors that we should take into consideration. First, we have the British thinkers in the 17th century. They are going to say that within the society, there is a contract, the civil contract. And this is a contract between individuals in which you give some of your rights to the state, and the state is trying to guarantee your safety for this. This is actually something that we keep on following today. Today, all of you back in your places where you are watching this video, you have already given some of your rights to the state, and the state is helping you to ensure or guarantee your safety. Let's just try an example. Imagine that I'm walking down the street and suddenly I find a person, and this person wants to rob me. Maybe he's trying to steal my phone. Um, what happens here is that I give my phone and this guy escapes. Okay? If we were in a natural state, what we would say is that I have the right to defend myself and maybe kill this guy because he's trying to rob me. That would be a natural state in which there is no state to defend my interests. Nowadays, we are not supposed to do that. Nowadays, we are saying that if this guy robs me, I should go now to the police, denounce him, and hopefully the police will arrest him, reinstall me my cell phone, and put this guy into jail. That is the way law operates today. These guys, back in the 17th century, started sustaining that this contract between individuals, society, and state was always operational. By this idea, they thought that the best political system was the one that guaranteed the, the majority of happiness for the majority of the individuals, trying with this to make all those that are living within a society happier. Okay, we're not going to go into the discussion of what is utilitarianism, but utilitarianism is precisely saying this, that you must try to give the biggest amount of happiness to the biggest amount of individuals. Okay. However, here we have two different ideas. On one hand, there is one philosopher, Thomas Hobbes, that says, for instance, that humankind is by nature evil, and that we are always trying to conquer and to damage the other individual. If this is true, then what he says is that we need an absolute monarch, a person that has absolute power and is going to present a regulation for all the individuals. This person is going to be the absolute king, and he's going to rule with an iron hand and trying to make all of us like to behave properly. On the other hand, we have this other philosopher that is called John Locke, and he's going to say that humankind is by nature as a blank piece of paper. He says that as a blank piece of paper, we're able to write in this piece of paper whichever laws of society that we may think of. The idea for this is that then we can get to an agreement in which we can put one person into the power, and this person can be as some sort of monarch or some sort of king, or to say nowadays as some sort of president, but his power will be limited. And what he's going to be doing is only mediating in conflicts so that we can have a better development and become better individuals. Okay, that is what happened with the British thinkers. On the other hand, we have the French thinkers, as Montesquieu, and he's going to propound the division of powers. Actually, this idea by Montesquieu keeps on being applied nowadays. Just try to think on how Mexico is ordained. We have the Ejecutivo, we have the Legislativo, and we have the Judicial. All these different powers that are gathered together in order to make our state work. All these ideas were presented firsthand by Montesquieu back in the French Revolution with the Enlightenment. Then we have Voltaire. Voltaire, he's going to propound freedom and religious tolerance for everyone. Main idea by Voltaire is to make all knowledge equal for everyone, and that through knowledge we would acquire freedom and we would be able to tolerate and interact in a peaceful coexistence with different individuals. Finally, we have Rousseau. Rousseau is going to be the precursor of democracy. He's going to say that any state that all states should be governed by the will of the people, by the will of the majority, what everyone wanted. As you can see, or as you can immediately imagine, this concept of democracy, it is precisely the same concept of democracy that we are using nowadays. So what I would like you to see is that the Enlightenment, the ideas that happened during the Enlightenment back in the 17th century, keep on being applied today. That is why it's important for us to understand the Enlightenment in order to understand the 19th century. If we do not know these changes in history, then it is impossible to understand what is going on nowadays with us. Okay. Now, following along with the idea over here by the economist of the 18th century, we have the French physiocrats of the 18th century, that they are going to say that wealth comes from owning a piece of land, and the state should not intervene in the affairs of the people. On the other hand, we have Adam Smith, who says that it is not owning a land, but being able to work and to produce. As you can see, being able to work and to produce and then earn money, and with that money you have wealth, and then you can buy properties. It is the starting point for capitalism. It is actually the starting point for the way that we arrange society nowadays. Okay, so now I'm going to keep on explaining some of the concepts that I think that are really important for us to understand the Enlightenment, and we're almost about to finish today's lesson. Okay, so here you have some of the authors, the main authors for the Enlightenment. Here you have Montesquieu, here you have Voltaire, here you have Rousseau that we've already talked about, and here you have this guy named Diderot. Diderot created this movement called the encyclopedia, or also the dictionary. He believed, as Voltaire did as well, that knowledge should be something that everyone was able to get to. So if you think about Wikipedia, maybe, Diderot will be a really huge fan of Wikipedia, saying that knowledge should be over there for everyone to acquire. Okay, let's talk about some of the characteristics of all these thinkers. Okay, so first we have rationalism. We've discussed this in this lesson. However, just want to emphasize that rationalism that started with René Descartes is the trust that we all have as humans that reason is the best way to acquire knowledge. This is a way to acquire knowledge that is mainly focused on humankind. Thus, it is anthropocentric. Anthros, man, centric, that it is put mankind in the center of all possible knowledge. Then they are going to say that nature, it is what substitutes the concept of God for them in the Enlightenment. Instead of being God the cause for everything, it is nature the cause of everything. Thus, what we must do is try to understand and study nature through reason in order to understand the world we live in. Then they are going to reinforce freedom of thought. They say that if there is no freedom of thought, no freedom of speech, or not freedom at all, then we do not have any conditions that would allow progress. This freedom is going to be as well used for the concept of human rights that you're going to see in the next couple of classes. They're going to have a critical attitude towards absolutism. They're going to propound, as we saw already with Montesquieu, division of powers, and they are going to propound also that there is a common will between all the individuals that will lead us always to the best possible solution. Okay? Then they sustain this laicity, and this laicity is that there must be religious tolerance. There must not be just one religion that is for everyone. For they, it is important that we can all have different beliefs on divinities, if we wish, and these gods, and the way these ideas are applied into everyday life must find this way to coexist. Okay, then they're also going to have faith in progress, and they are going to think that the way we are today is going to get better tomorrow in the future. So they're always going to be thinking about the way we have the future, that what we are doing today is going to shape the future we live in. And finally, they're going to have this main agenda about education. They are going to say that without education, society cannot progress. And I would like you to see, for instance, how these enlightened ideas that started in the 18th century um, echo still up until today on the 21st century. Just try to remember the last political campaign. What were they saying about education? Or just try to think about the discussion in the news last week about the release of El Baster Gordillo here in Mexico. They are worried about education. Okay, so this concern about education, this saying that education is the only way to change our society, was pre-established many centuries ago, and it's something uh, that we keep on discussing nowadays. Okay. Finally, as I talked already about the encyclopedia by Diderot, so he said that in the encyclopedia we should have all this set of knowledge and thought that must be able for everyone to acquire. Okay, so finally I would like to give you these critical questions and the instructions for the activity. I'm going to send to the WhatsApp group this to the WhatsApp group this reading, that is the natural rights of French people to views. It is a reading quite easy actually. It's just 2 pages long. And with this, I would like you to gather in teams, make these gathering in teams something that you can do just in the WhatsApp group, or gather with your friends. I'm sorry, I have to connect my computer. Just wait a minute. So thank you very much for being here with me today. Sorry for making this video up until Saturday, but yesterday was finished this. Okay, so that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.